Danny Kluthe runs a family hog operation in rural Dodge, Nebraska. Step inside one of the barns and you'll see and hear it's like many hog operations in the state.
You know, my job is to get them little pigs fat and get them to market.
The little pigs weigh 12 pounds or so when they come to Kluthe's facility. 5 or 6 months later, he's cared for them enough they are ready to go to market, weighing 20 times more than when they arrived.
These hogs are treated better than humans. I mean, their diet is to a T for their age. Fresh water, fresh air. They sleep with a grin on their face.
With about 7,500 hogs typically on hand, a lot goes into fattening them up. That means there's a lot that comes out of them, too. It's manure, and that's where Kluthe's operation becomes unlike any other in the state. The waste of hogs and other farm animals create high levels of the greenhouse gas methane. Methane can last more than a decade in the atmosphere and is 20 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a contributor to climate warming. But Kluthe is taking steps to make his farm an environmental game changer.
What I really call this thing is a manure processing system with the byproduct being electricity.
Hogs create an average of more than a gallon of manure each day. All told, Kluthe's hogs generate over 9,000 gallons, enough to fill a gas tanker every day of the year. Down the hill from the hog barns is a pit. An underground pipe system uses gravity so the manure flows downhill. Manure collected in a pit is common at hog operations, but what happens in this pit is not. This 14-foot deep airtight tank is called a methane digester. There are about 150 of them on farms in the United States, but Kluthe's is the only one in Nebraska.
The raw manure goes down to the digester where we've got bacteria, lots of bacteria. And what the bacteria does is actually breaks the manure down and it comes out liquid. Every day I feed about a quarter of a pit to the digester, and every day the hogs replace it. That is renewable.
The digester is heated to about 100 degrees. That's ideal for the bacteria to break down the manure and release methane gas, a process that takes about 3 weeks. The pit traps the methane in its oxygen-free environment. Kluthe then uses the methane as a fuel to run farm utilities.
The methane gas gets sucked up here to the 3306 cat engine that's running a generator. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I always say this cat engine just purrs on this methane.
The Caterpillar engine sits in its own small building. Designed to use either methane or propane as fuel, the engine produces electricity and it's put on the grid, completing the manure to electricity process. Nebraska Public Power buys the energy from Kluthe's family energy company.
We actually make enough electricity here to take care of about 45 to 50 homes a year. I would use about 20% of the production and sell 80%. For a byproduct, we actually got a lot of electricity here. Anybody in Cumming County that turns their lights on doesn't know the difference whether it's coming from Cooper Nuclear or Olean Energy.
They're creating greenhouse gases, actually creating a very potent greenhouse gas, so you don't want that to escape. And so it's really important to capture as much of that methane as you can.
For biological systems engineers like Rick Stoll and Crystal Powers, finding ways to utilize what might otherwise be waste is a scientific process that helps make agriculture more sustainable.
In each step of the process, from growing your forages and grains for your livestock to feeding the animal to within the manure, how do we capture as much energy in each step? And anaerobic digesters fit in there because we're figuring out how to get more energy out of that manure before it's ultimately used as fertilizer.
Livestock manure is used as fertilizer for crop agriculture. Methane-free manure is too, and Kluthe says it's odorless. Livestock waste odor is found offensive by some, and it is occasionally the grounds for lawsuits. Ryan McGee is with the USDA's Agricultural Research Service. In the lab, he's examining what happens to the manure in the different stages of Kluthe's process.
So these samples are from the pit, which are essentially green, raw manure, very little treatment. Then the next step is after it's been digested through the anaerobic digester, which is a basic flow of treatment at the Kluthe site.
We're asking them to look at solids content, the organic matter, how that's breaking down. That would tell us how well the digester is performing. And then we're also very interested in what's the likelihood of gases coming off that would cause odors. And the assumption is that the digester is going to break down those and reduce the likelihood of odorous gases and other undesired gases coming off.
Digester technology has evolved based upon the discovery that methane is flammable and can be used as fuel.
That happened clear back in the 17th century, but it took us up until the late 1800s before we were capturing that to do anything with it, and it's only been recently that we've been doing it at a scale to where we can really produce electricity. So there's kind of just slowly finding new pieces of the puzzle to figure out how can we make this work and how can we balance society's needs with production agricultural's needs.
What happens in science labs impacts society in many ways, but the reverse is true too.
Greenhouse gases have been implicated with climate change, and there's the science out there that's for and against that, but we're looking at how much of that greenhouse gas production is produced by agriculture and livestock specifically, and then what can we do about that? And so that all came about really over about a 5-year period here in the United States due to public perceptions and then looking for information and trying to get the facts.
In addition to methane and odor control, the State Department of Environmental Quality investigates another way livestock production can have a serious negative environmental impact: water contamination.
85% of our population in Nebraska relies on groundwater for drinking water. If waste gets into water, it's likely to cause a problem. I mean, that's the whole purpose of our livestock permitting program, is to keep livestock waste out of the waters of the state, the groundwater, the streams, the rivers, and the lakes and the reservoirs.
Marty Link is Water Quality Associate Director. She says harm to drinking water isn't the only concern if livestock waste gets in the water.
When it runs off into a stream, it can cause the algae to get all excited, and it gets all this nutrients and it starts growing a lot. And so there's an algae bloom. The algae bloom takes up a lot of oxygen. Oxygen is all depleted then from the water, and the fish won't have the oxygen in order to breathe, and they may die. That's a worst case scenario.
These are just two very basic instruments that we use to measure the pH. We have the pH meter. And then we would
That's something being examined at the UNL lab too.
You're basically measuring oxygen depletion in a given sample. How much oxygen would that sample deplete in a water body if it got out into a natural water body?
Accidents happen, but well-managed waste should not make it into the stream.
You know, now all of the effluent that goes down the lagoon is odorless. So really it's just kind of nice, pretty lake out there.
At Danny Kluthe's hog operation, he can still use the manure waste as fertilizer after capturing the methane to be a fuel source. He likes that the digester helps him be a good neighbor. He started dreaming of this facility in 2003, but wasn't producing electricity until more than 2 years later, due mostly to the permitting process.
We've got a track record, and now we've got something that, you know, other producers can come and look at and say, wow.
It's a costly endeavor Kluthe could only make happen with grants that totaled hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's one of the barriers in front of more livestock producers wanting to do what Kluthe has, but he's not done. Another grant will provide about 1/4 of the funding to install a scrubber that will remove methane impurities and leave propane. He estimates the additional use of the manure byproduct could eliminate his annual energy costs of $30,000.
And I'm excited about the fact that we'll be able to heat our barns, dry our corn, whatever we use propane for now, we're going to be using methane. And will this solve our oil crisis? Probably not, but it's a piece of the puzzle.
Danny Kluthe is working to solve two puzzles at the same time. He's helping the environment by reducing a greenhouse gas and eliminating odor. He's also creating renewable energy, all from turning what had been waste into a resource. For Harvest Public Media, I'm Perry Stoner.